To understand the Middle Ages, we start with the Roman Empire, a vast world stretching from Britain to Mesopotamia. Rome brought roads, laws, and a shared culture to Europe, but by the 5th century it was crumbling. Too big, too divided, under attack. As Rome faltered, Christianity rose, becoming the empire's official religion under Constantine, offering hope and unity. The Church echoed Roman administration, holding Europe together as the empire faded. When the last Western Roman emperor fell in 476 AD, Roman roads and memories lingered. Monks preserved not just the Bible, but Roman knowledge for future generations. Medieval Europe rose from Rome's ruins, built on Christian faith and Roman legacy. The Romans called outsiders barbarians, Goths, Vandals, Franks, and more. These groups weren't unified, but as Rome weakened, they crossed its borders, sometimes fleeing the Huns, sometimes seeking new homes. The sack of Rome by the Visigoths in 410 was a shock, but these newcomers didn't want to destroy civilization. They wanted to inherit it. They adopted Roman customs, titles, and even coins, blending old and new. The Franks, under King Clovis, converted to Catholic Christianity, gaining powerful allies and setting themselves apart from other tribes. Clovis's dynasty, the Merovingians, laid the foundation for medieval France. The Western Roman Empire was gone, replaced by a patchwork of kingdoms built on Roman ruins. These new rulers tried to balance their warrior traditions with the legacy of Rome. The Church offered them legitimacy and unity. Europe was now a mosaic of cultures, faiths, and ambitions. The age of the barbarians was really the birth of medieval Europe. Out of the chaos, the Franks rose to power, led by Charlemagne, Charles the Great. Charlemagne dreamed of reviving Roman unity, but with a Christian heart. Through relentless warfare, he built an empire covering much of Western Europe. He reformed government, sending envoys to oversee justice and administration. Charlemagne sparked a cultural revival, the Carolingian Renaissance, inviting scholars to his court and standardizing writing. On Christmas Day, 800, the Pope crowned him Emperor of the Romans, signaling a new era. For a moment it seemed the West was united again, but the empire depended on Charlemagne's strength. After his death, it fractured. His successors couldn't hold it together. The dream of a new Rome faded, but the idea endured. Charlemagne's legacy shaped Europe's future, inspiring kings and emperors for centuries. The Church and empire were now intertwined. The Middle Ages would be defined by this uneasy partnership. After Charlemagne, Europe splintered, inviting waves of invaders. Vikings from the north raided and settled, founding cities and kingdoms from England to Russia. Magyars swept in from the east, terrorizing Central Europe until they settled and became Christian Hungarians. From the south, Saracen raiders struck Mediterranean coasts, disrupting trade and sacking cities. These attacks plunged Europe into chaos, shattering central authority. People turned to local lords for protection, as kings proved powerless. Castles rose and power became local. The age of invasions forced Europe to adapt, setting the stage for a new social order. The invaders eventually became part of Europe's fabric. Out of fear and instability, a new system emerged. Feudalism was born from the ashes of empire and invasion. With kings too weak to protect their lands, feudalism took root. Lords granted land, fiefs, to knights in exchange for loyalty and military service. This web of personal oaths created a pyramid of power, with the king at the top in theory, but real authority was local. Knights might serve several lords, making loyalties complicated. At the bottom were peasants. Most were serfs, tied to the land, owing labor and crops to their lord in exchange for protection. Life was hard and unchanging. Most people were born and died in the same station. Society was divided into those who fought, those who prayed, and those who worked. The Church blessed this order, reinforcing its stability. Castles became centers of power and refuge. Social mobility was rare. The system was rigid. Feudalism shaped European life for centuries. It was a world built on land, loyalty, and labor. The structure was messy, but it brought a measure of order to a dangerous world. This was the backbone of medieval society. Around the year 1000, Europe began to change. Warmer weather and new technology, the heavy plow, horse collar, and three-field system, boosted food production. Surpluses led to population growth and the revival of towns. Not everyone had to farm. New trades and crafts flourished. Towns became centers of opportunity, where serfs could gain freedom. Guilds regulated trades and a new merchant class emerged. Trade revived, fueled by better coins and bustling fairs. Italian cities like Venice and Genoa grew rich on commerce. A network of trade connected Europe from north to south. This economic revival funded cathedrals, crusades, and challenged old feudal ways. The seeds of a new, more dynamic society were sown. Europe was waking up from centuries of stagnation. Europe's energy spilled outward in the 11th century. Knights, hungry for land and glory, joined the Reconquista in Spain, pushing back Islamic rule. The Crusades sent armies east to capture Jerusalem, blending faith and ambition. Crusading zeal also targeted pagans in the Baltic, as German knights conquered and settled new lands. Expansion was violent and complex, driven by faith, greed, and restless warriors. New kingdoms and frontiers emerged. The Church blessed these campaigns, promising salvation and reward. The map of Europe was redrawn by conquest and colonization. This outward push shaped Europe's identity and borders. The age of expansion brought both opportunity and conflict. Medieval Europe was now a force on the world stage. As knights fought abroad, a power struggle raged at home, Pope versus Emperor. The Church claimed supremacy, clashing with kings over who could appoint bishops. The showdown between Pope Gregory VII and Emperor Henry IV ended with the emperor begging forgiveness at Canossa. The Church reached its peak under Pope Innocent III, dominating kings and shaping doctrine. Cathedrals soared, and the Church touched every aspect of life. But power bred corruption and criticism. Heretical movements challenged church authority. The Inquisition was born to root out dissent. The struggle between popes and kings would never fully resolve. Over time, monarchs grew stronger, chipping away at church power. The balance of power was shifting. The seeds of modern states were being sown. By the 14th century, Europe was thriving, until disaster struck. The Black Death swept across the continent, killing up to half the population. The shock was immense. Society and art became obsessed with death. Labor shortages gave surviving peasants new power. They demanded better wages and revolted when denied. The old feudal order began to crumble, replaced by cash payments and new social mobility. Innovation accelerated. Water mills, new tools, and most importantly, Gutenberg's printing press. Books became cheaper, spreading knowledge beyond the church and elite. Stronger monarchies emerged, building armies and bureaucracies, bypassing feudal lords. The 100 Years' War forged national identities in France and England. The patchwork of feudal lordships gave way to early nation-states. Europe was ready for a new era. The Middle Ages ended not with collapse, but with transformation. The world was poised for exploration, innovation, and change. The legacy of the Middle Ages would shape the modern world.